They have like 56 fields. Ridiculous. It's honestly, it's not that fun for me as a.
We'll now call the meeting to order.
Sure. High school starts in August.
We'll now call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the final agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the June 1, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. We have two items for discussion and action on our agenda tonight. The first is item 3.1, Rolling Hills First Edition Final Plat. Before opening up for discussion or questions, I will now turn it over to Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dole for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Before we get started, one quick note. You may notice on your slide that this development is being referred to now as Huntersbrook. We were notified earlier this week that the developers have changed the name. So if you hear us say Huntersbrook or Rolling Hills interchangeably, we are talking about the same development, but I will try to change my vernacular after all of these months now and refer to it as the proper name. So as you...
Appropriate name.
Yeah.
Even the gun club? Yeah.
So as you mentioned, we are here to review the final plat application for the first edition of Huntersbrook. As you'll recall, this has been a several-month process. So back in November, both the Planning Commission and City Council reviewed the sketch plat application for this development. In April, the preliminary plat was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission and approved by the City Council. And as part of this, as this property was not previously within part of the City of Victoria, annexation was also approved by the City Council on April 12th, and the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings approved that annexation on April 29th. So the property in question is now currently within the city limits of Victoria. So just as a quick refresher, this development is being proposed as a planned unit development with R1 underlying zoning. It is being proposed to be done in phases. So the first addition will include 115 residential lots, as well as the clubhouse, which we've discussed in previous meetings. That breaks down currently to 43 of the tradition single-family lots, 35 of the heritage single-family lots, and 37 of the Revere Villa lots, and we'll get into those, what those are again just in a few minutes. Staff has reviewed the final plat application and the plat itself and have a belief that it is generally consistent with the approved preliminary plat. So as I mentioned, the development is being planned for phases. The first edition is shown highlighted in blue in the center of the property, with the areas that are intended to be final platted at a later date as the second edition shown in red. So part of this review by the Planning Commission is to ensure consistency with the preliminary plat, as well as to ensure that conditions that were put in place for the preliminary plat were met or are intended to be met prior to final plat approval. So this information was also included in your background packet, but I will also take a few minutes just to buzz through what those conditions of preliminary plat approval and the status of those items are. So number one, again, was the annexation. Those township fees were satisfied by the property owner and developer, and as I mentioned, that annexation was approved. Condition two was that zoning to planned unit development will be concurrent with the final plat approval, and that is still the intent. The council is to consider the zoning ordinance for PUD as part of their final plat review. That draft ordinance was included in your background packet. Item number, number three The applicant was to address to the city's satisfaction all the items in the staff and engineer's response memos. Many of the items that were highlighted in the preliminary plat process were addressed. All the final items and with the updated staff review memo are currently being addressed by the developer. Those final construction documents are nearing completion and they are to be completed prior to city council consideration of the final plat. Condition 4 was to submit an updated preliminary grading plan and address several items that the city had called out. Those revisions were provided, and as I mentioned, the final construction plans are nearing completion and to be completed prior to city council approval. Similar to number 5, the city had requested some revised landscape plans with additional boulevard trees. Those revisions were made, and those final landscape plans are also nearing completion. Item number 6 was to address the ongoing maintenance of all retaining walls within the property, as well as to provide copies of all homeowners association documents and covenants. The retaining walls, as you saw with some of the draft disclosure language included in your packet, are established as the responsibility of the HOA or the homeowners, and the full HOA docs and covenants are required to be reviewed by the city attorney prior to any plat recording. Item number 7 was to include a barrier between the Schmieg Hilltop Farm and any residential lots that share a property line. The developer has actually proposed something a little more than just the lot area. So as shown in your plans, there is a 4-foot tall white picket fence that's being included along the entire northern portion of the property boundary except for the far west steep slope area. And I've got a exhibit I'll show where that area is when we move on a little farther. Item 8 was to address the mitigation required by statute as it related to the Hunt Club. The applicant has spoke with, and addressed those items with Hunt Club representatives. Number 9 was to provide and record disclosures notifying all future purposes of the uses and purchasers of the uses and impacts of adjacent properties. Again, the draft disclosure language was included in your packet, and those full HOA docs and covenants will be required prior to recording. Item number 10 was to comply with all regulations of the CCWMO and receive their approvals. Their final approvals will be required prior to recording, and their comment memo with the revisions that are required was also included in your packet. Item number 11 is a requirement to enter into a development agreement with the city prior to final plat approval or concurrent with, and we're currently working with the applicant on reviewing that draft DA, and that will be part of the city's consideration for final plat. Number 12, provide a letter of credit for all public improvements associated with this development. That letter of credit will also be required prior to any document recording. Obtaining all necessary other government regulatory agency approvals. Those approvals, such as the CCWMO, as I mentioned, are required prior to recording. Submitting title work and complying with the city attorney's plat opinion. That title work was submitted and is currently being reviewed. And then the last condition was to submit the final plat to the city within 90 days of prelim plat approval, which was adequately addressed. So just to bring everyone back up to speed as to where we're at with this first edition development, as I mentioned, there are 3 different types of homes that are being proposed: tradition, heritage, and revere. Those come with different minimum lot areas, minimum lot width, steps, the side yard setbacks, front yard and rear setbacks. These are unchanged from what you saw in the preliminary plat. With the caveat that it is included in the construction plans that the revere lots along the collector road will have a 30-foot front yard setback. That's something that we had discussed previously. All corner lot side yard setbacks on the street side are to be 20 feet. And as we discussed at preliminary plat, the maximum impervious surface is 45% for the tradition lots and 50% for the heritage and revere lots. As was indicated, there is a clubhouse planned for this development that would be usable by all owners within the development. This is currently located on Block 8, Lot 9. This would be an HOA-owned and maintained amenity. Clubhouse to this nature is a permitted use within our R1 districts. It's to include a fitness area and pool, among other amenities. And then there is also planned to be on-site parking spaces as well as some additional bump-out parking along Harvest Trail that's shown in blue on the image in front of you. Parks, trails, and dedication. So as was previously discussed, the applicant is still intending to dedicate 5.4 acres of parkland. That park is located between Harvest Trail and Game Farm Road and in between Creekside Lane and 11. In addition, for park dedication purposes, there are 1.22 acres of trail corridor that will be provided as park credit. So with the required dedication and the land that's being provided, the parkland dedication fee that would be required on top of that is approximately $234,150. This image just shows a bit of the pedestrian network that is being proposed as part of the first edition. Those trails that are shown in red are those trails that will count towards park credit. The green area is 8-foot bituminous trail along collector roadways, and the blue lines show sidewalk. As I mentioned earlier, the developer has proposed to include a 4-foot tall white picket fence along the northern property line, with the exception of that far northwest corner here, which is a wooded steep slope area. But that fence is intended to range from the trail area all the way to the eastern part of the property. Obviously, this piece is phase 2 or a second edition, but the intent would be to have that along that northern property line. That fence would also be owned and maintained by the HOA or homeowners.
It doesn't cross the street at the end there, or you have it's not solid?
I left those blanks in to show that it wasn't going across the street, and Pat or Dave can probably address that. I don't know that the intention would be for the fence to cross the street, as there'd likely be other barricades that are required on those stub streets.
Yeah, we weren't planning to extend it across the future street extensions. We would break it at the right of way.
Okay, just curious.
Tree replacement. So with this development through the city's current tree replacement and preservation ordinance, staff has calculated approximately 7,950 inches caliper required for replacement. The developer is proposing 2,929 inches in replacement, in addition to 500 inches included in buffer areas that do not count towards replacement inches. So in total, it's about 3,400, 3,500 inches in trees being provided on the site. As we've discussed previously, the city is providing some credit in lieu of the tree replacement, approximately 3,200 acres for items such as the lift station parcel, the right-of-way for County Road 11, some passive parkland, the collector road trail, as well as the fencing along the northern property line. And with that calculation, there's still approximately 1,791 caliper inches remaining, which would require dedication to the city's tree fund of approximately $179,000. Again, as we've discussed previously, the developer is expected to contribute towards the Highway 11 Victoria Drive improvements. That design and construction is anticipated to take place in 2022. Staff has recommended that the trail along County Road 11 not be installed at this time and instead be part of the applicant's financial contribution with that improvement. Adequate right-of-way is being included on the plat to fit the trail in, and that contribution amount needs to be finalized prior to City Council's consideration and would be included in the developer's agreement. Utility oversizing. So again, as has been mentioned previously, there are some sewer and water lines that need to be oversized to provide additional capacity for properties to the north and west for future development. The city has traditionally paid that difference in cost for oversizing. That's not necessarily for the specific development. So those total oversizing costs also need to be finalized prior to City Council consideration and will be included in the developer's agreement. As has also been discussed previously, the city is requiring a parcel for a lift station to serve this area. Outlot K, which is being shown in yellow, is the area to be dedicated for the lift station at the corner of Creekside Lane and Game Farm Road. Just as an aside for this group, a contract has been awarded for construction of that lift station, so those plans are moving forward. And the city is still continuing the process of acquiring easements with the adjacent property owners to extend those utility services. Stormwater management is subject to the Carver County Watershed Management Organization in this area. Their comments that were included in your background packet must be adequately addressed before the council consideration of the project. And it have been discussed previously. There is a proposal for a capture reuse system that would meet their CCWMO permit requirements, and the city is requiring final plan specs and maintenance requirements for the system to be provided and signed off on prior to council consideration. So with all of those items, as I mentioned, staff does believe the final plat for the first edition is generally consistent with the preliminary plat that has been approved. The conditions have been met or are intended to be met or will be conditioned to be met prior to final plat approval or recording. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend the City Council approve the final plat for the Huntersbrook first edition with the following conditions: addressing the items outlined in the June 11th staff response and engineers memos that were included in your packet, addressing the comments from the CCWMO, entering into a development agreement and paying all applicable fees and providing all financial guarantees, submitting and recording homeowners association documents, addressing the ongoing maintenance of common improvements, including retaining walls, fences, sidewalks, mailboxes, boulevard trees, and signs, providing and recording all disclosures, as we've discussed specifically for the Hunt Club and the Schmieg Farm, as well as standard disclosure items, complying with the requirements of the city attorney's plat opinion, recording the final plat with the county within 120 days, and then furnishing the city with a certified Mylar copy of the plat, evidencing filing with the county. And with that, Chair, I will turn it back over to the commission for discussion or questions.
Thank you very much, Director Marty Dole. Planning Commission members, is there any thoughts, any comments on this? One of which Commissioner Swarding on the fence that you had brought up.
Well, I was just curious if it went straight across the road or not.
Yep. Okay.
Otherwise, people will obviously have access to that. But
I have a question about the lift station. I'm just curious what that looks like and what kind of use it has. How often is it utilized? I'm just kind of curious from a traffic standpoint. I don't know a lot about lift stations.
Yeah, Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission, I will try to speak from memory in the conversations I've been in with our city engineer. So I believe that the contract was awarded is for a brick facade building. So it would, again, blend in. It would look like a nicer building than just a tin shack. So it's intended to be a brick facade. The lift station, in my understanding, is always working. The lift station is always lifting and helping move sewage. And it does occasionally need public works staff to stop in, do some inspections if they receive error messages or things to come in and work. But it's not something that would have staff at it every day, but would periodically have public works staff needing to get to and access.
And there's enough of a shoulder where trucks can go and park safely there?
Yeah, in fact, one of the discussions we had previously with the applicant is that with the development proposal to the south, the Rolling Hill South proposal, they had proposed some realignment of the roadway, which actually was going to impact Public Works' ability to come straight off of Game Farm Road and into the driveway access to the lift station. That has since been resolved, and that is now the case again. So the intention is that Public Works staff will have a straight access off of Game Farm Road into the lift station drive.
I have a general question, and I know you were at the city council meeting, and I didn't watch it or anything. Obviously, we're in a watering ban. We have a very unusual June with dry weather. I could see where a lot of people in the city of Victoria would be saying, why are we adding more users to the system if we can't handle the users that we have? So I don't know, is there any direction, or is there anything that the city of Victoria is doing to increase the capacity as we bring on new subdivisions?
Yeah, Commissioner Schwarting, Chair, members of the commission, I would encourage you all and anyone who's watching at home to review that meeting from last evening. City Engineer Guerin actually gave a presentation during the reports section of the meeting, talking about when the city's capacity is looked at for increasing additional storage. Again, I will try to summarize her much more intelligent discussion on this, but her indication was that you don't typically build a municipal system for the worst drought years or the highest impact times, because if you were to do that, you end up having infrastructure in the ground that's not used 90% of the time. So the system is designed in a way that it will meet peak performance. Obviously, you're able to exceed that peak performance to an extent. And that when it's the city's stormwater and water utility plan is rated for X number of homes, that this will be able to meet peak demand and extent. And when you exceed that demand or that level of homes, that's when additional infrastructure should be considered. Again, I didn't articulate that as well as our engineer, but I would encourage anybody who's interested to check out. It's at the very end of the meeting from last night.
Weren't they
Go ahead.
looking at putting another well down along County Road 11?
Yeah, there will be a well. That wouldn't necessarily be a major impact in the situation we are right now, because right now with the watering ban, it's the capacity at the water treatment center and just being able to keep the water treated and stored in the underground and water towers. But yes, there is a well planned just south of the property line here in the next development coming before you.
My other question, I guess I have, at the park, is that parkland just dedicated, or are you building the courts and building facilities there?
Yeah, I can jump on that one. So we've actually had some preliminary discussion. We're planning to meet next week. Parks Director Ann Mankey has asked if the developer would be interested, in lieu of the cash donation and the parkland dedication fee, actually providing some of the specific improvements. Typically with a park dedication, the requirement is to provide the land in a rough grade usable area, seeded, so that it's not just dirt and mud and runoff. But we have started some discussion and are planning to talk next week as to whether it makes sense to actually have some of those improvements be made by the developer. Things like the parking lot or maybe the trail through there, have those done, finish grade and seeding to park standards, those sort of things.
Okay, I just saw it ghosted in.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
And if I can add on top of that, we worked with city, we got a park layout that the city gave us. We customized our grading plan to adjust where they want the tennis courts, so we're grading it to be usable. Like Marty said, there'll be discussions on how much farther it goes.
That's accurate. We've had lots of discussion, and the layout that's shown is the rough layout of what the Parks Department would like to see there.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to the watering ban is that my interpretation was that it was very, very heavy on the preventative part, to make sure that if this goes on for a period of time, we don't get into a real serious mine. And so let's stop right now, and let's make sure that, again, if we have 2 months of this, we're going to be in big trouble, pretty much no matter what, but less of a problem by halting it at this point.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't have a problem with it. If anything, I guess I wish I would have stopped watering my grass, 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, if I knew it was going to, burn up and go dormant anyway. But whatever. At this point in time, save on some water. I feel bad for landscapers. I was out riding my bike today. A lot of people mowing grass, and that's their livelihood, and it might be the last time they're mowing, but whatever. Hopefully I think we're expecting some rain, I think. They said, that sounds like some weather patterns are changing, and maybe we'll get some relief.
Well, and certainly one of the other issues, we have 3 different sets of friends that have new homes. And of course, they're looking at dirt and a real mess. So praying for rain so that they can get on with the sod. So any other concerns on?
Not concerns, I think they've met I think they've dealt with everything that we brought up previously, and I think they've dealt with it accordingly, so.
I just wanted to make sure that the 4-foot white picket fence was something that the Schmiegs and everyone's agreeable with. I know we talked about a bunch of different types of barriers to go up there. Is everyone happy?
Patrick, do you want to address that? Could you go up to the podium, please? Thank
I
you.
just don't want it to be like, oh yeah, we're putting up a 4-foot white picket fence, and then the Schmiegs are like, no, this is garbage. We want something bigger, more elaborate. And I know you were working well with them in the past, so I just want to make sure.
With them, commissioners, we met with the Schmiegs shortly after our last meeting on prelim plat and walked the entire length of the property line between the Schmiegs farm and the gas stack land, discussed our options and talked about this white picket fence that we prefer. We have thousands of feet of it, particularly in our Spirit of Branchin farm development. It's just a real appealing fence, has kind of a country look to it. I shared the thoughts on that with Julie Schmieg and her family the day that we walked out there, and I'll double check with them, but my understanding that day and in follow-up conversations, because that day we talked about not doing it in certain areas, and we thought it would look kind of piecemeal, so in the end we just decided to do the whole thing, and I think that they were happy about that, to keep folks away from the livestock that they have there, and then also that electric fence.
Their electric fence, they're not taking it out, so you're just.
Yeah, that's
providing a
going to
barrier,
operate.
so that is still there for them.
So with the road crossings, to hit on your point a little bit, the road crossings, we did plan to break it there, but we understand the electric fence and the cattle will still be there. So there's other things we can do. The white pickets, it's expensive, and it might be a number of years. I think we'd be probably spending another $10,000 to $15,000 at those crossings where we're already going to be putting in like a permanent traffic barrier. We thought maybe we could do another type of fence, a chain link or a construction style fencing there, but we're open to ideas. If it's something you would like to see continuous, we can consider that.
Well, I think one of your proposals was to do plantings before a fence. Would you want to put some plantings in where the roads are? So that you have fence, plantings, and then finally when the roads, if it's going to be 15 years, you'll get
Yeah, I think,
plantings that'll probably obscure that.
Yeah, I think,
keep it-
I think the Schmiegs preferred the fencing, to be quite honest,
That was the indication.
yeah, the trees look nice and give some variety there, but, they take a long time, and there's still a pathway, to get back through the trees, and they just like the barrier of having the fence there when we had met, so, I think the preference would be if we're gonna beef it up in the intersections, that we should just continue the fence straight through.
What, do you know now what the material you're using for the fencing? Is it a maintenance-free
It is
type of material that
maintenance-free.
won't
It's,
have to be painted
Yep,
consistently?
it's a vinyl fence. It holds up very well, commercial duty fence, and, I don't think we've had any problems with it that I know of. And we're still in Branchin Farm, what's our largest development. We are still operating the HOA and maintain that fencing system, and it's very low maintenance. We don't spend a lot of time or money on it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, it certainly is the objective to make everything happen, and certainly within the parameters that keeps everyone happy, or the maximum number happy. And I recall the first discussion on the fence, and that is critical. And the electric fence is quite a jolt, the one that they're using in particular. So we want to preventatively keep ourselves out of trouble. So, thank you very much. Any other concerns on this?
I just had a separate concern. Marty, do you know if Public Works has looked at the stormwater reuse requirements that the city's going to have to take on, which is on page 33 of our packet, item C? And do they have current resources to be able to accommodate this? And if they don't, what would be a plan to offset the city's increased expenses against the HOA that's going to benefit from the reuse of the stormwater for irrigating?
Yeah, Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the commission. So we did receive some preliminary specifications, some design plans from a previous development showing how this type of system works. We've actually engaged with a sub-consultant through engineering, WSB, who has a lot of experience in these types of situations to provide some information and expertise as to what does it take to continue to maintain and use these systems in the long term. So we're still not completely through with all of that review and getting that information together. I know Public Works is very interested and wants to make sure they're comfortable with it moving forward before giving a final head nod or okay that this is going to work. So again, I think as I noted within the recommendations is that we'd require Public Works to be comfortable with that and have a plan in place prior to the City Council considering approval on that.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Hearing no more discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve. I'd like to recommend the city council approve the final plat for Huntersbrook First Edition upon all conditions presented and discussed being met.
Thank you very much, Laura. Is there a
Second
second?
that motion.
Excellent. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. The second item on our discussion agenda is item 3.2, 2021 mid-year report for City Council. I will now turn this back over to Director Marty Dole for a staff presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. We are here to do a brief overview for the 2021 mid-year report to the City Council, which right now is tentatively scheduled for the next council meeting on June 28th. So just a little background on this item. This is something that came from the City Council's strategic planning session earlier this year and in wanting to have a little bit more engagement and face time with its different commissions and committee members. So they had requested that each commission or committee provide a mid-year and a end-of-year report, just talking about progress on the things that have happened to date, things that are on the agenda, how the work plan is coming that the City Council ultimately approves. So that is why this is something new that will be taking place this year for both this group, the Parks and Recreation Committee, as well as the newly formed Senior Advisory Committee. So what our intention is this evening is to just do a brief overview of all of the items we've already addressed this year and talk a little bit about some of the things that we know are still coming down the pipeline before the end of the year with the hope that Chair Iverson and or Vice Chair Pederson will be willing and able to participate and provide that information to the council at their next meeting.
Very good. I will now open the floor for the planning commissioners to discuss.
Chair, would you like me to just walk through the?
Oh,
the
yeah,
items?
absolutely. Excuse me. Yep.
for
Yep.
sure.
I read the print portion. Thank you.
This is all information that was included in your background packet, but sometimes it's always nice to just hear it reinforced. If you looked through this, you'll realize we've gotten through a lot of stuff already in the first less than 6 months of this year. So just briefly, in January, we adopted the 2021 Planning Commission work plan and the meeting calendar. We also held a public hearing and considered a variance for the Waterbrook Fellowship, which was requesting encroachment into the 100-foot ordinary high water line. That ultimately ended up in a recommendation of denial. In February, we continued discussion on revisions to the tree preservation and replacement ordinance. We also held a public hearing and considered updates to the City of Victoria zoning map, which ultimately recommended approval and was approved. In March, the first meeting in March, you reviewed the sketch plat for Madelyn Trail. That's the property that is on 78th and Cochia. And then we also continued discussion on the tree preservation and replacement ordinance. The second meeting in March was the sketch plat for the shores of Marsh Lake. And there was also a public hearing held for a conditional use permit for the Humanity Alliance. Again, this group recommended approval, and that CUP was approved by the council. In April, Commissioner Iverson was elected chair and Commissioner Pederson was elected vice chair. We also in that meeting held a public hearing and considered the preliminary plat, annexation, and zoning for Rolling Hills, which we saw the final plat this evening. Again, that was recommended for approval and was approved by the City Council. The second meeting in April, there was a public hearing held for consideration of vacation of park designation and a minor subdivision for the city-owned lot and parkland on Smithtown Road. Again, that was recommended for approval, and the council ultimately approved that as well. And on that, during that meeting, we also reviewed the sketch plat for Rolling Hills South. In May, a public hearing was held to consider the preliminary plat, comp plan amendment, and rezoning for Madelyn Trail. The group recommended approval of that preliminary plat as well, and that plat was and comp plan amendment were also approved by the City Council. In May, we also continued discussion on the tree preservation and replacement ordinance. And then getting up to June, so our meeting last, on June 1st here, our last meeting, we held a public hearing and considered amendments to the subdivision ordinance that this group recommended approval and the council approved at their last meeting. We also continued discussion on the tree preservation and replacement ordinance. And then of course that gets us to tonight where you have considered the final plat for Rolling Hills first, well, sorry, that still says Rolling Hills, for Huntersbrook first edition, which you have recommended approval, and we are reviewing our mid-year report. So just to look ahead into the future, some of the things we've already got on the calendar in July, we've got a couple of additional public hearings. There will be a public hearing to consider amendments to the tree preservation and replacement ordinance. There will also be a public hearing to consider the preliminary plat, annexation, and zoning for Rolling Hills South. And then we will have, similar to the meeting tonight, we will have consideration of final plat for Madelyn Trail coming up in July. In August, we'll be looking to hold a public hearing and consider preliminary plat and annexation for the shores of Marsh Lake property, as well as bringing back our downtown parking discussion from late last year. And then in September, we are planning to kick off the discussion on our residential zoning districts, PUD ordinance review and discussion. And then a couple of other items that we know are either coming up or on the work plan that have not been put in dates yet. We will at some point presumably have the Rolling Hills South final plat and the Shores of Marsh Lake final plat that will come before this group. As part of your work plan, we've got the review design criteria and placemaking standards for the CBD and Downtown West, as well as conducting a follow-up and providing recommendations to the City Council on the Victoria Worx area. So just kind of a progress check on our work plan. First item in our plan was to hear and provide recommendations on sketch plats, preliminary plats, variances, CUPs, etc. We've had quite a few of them already to date. We've had 3 sketch plats, 2 prelim plats, 1 final plat, 1 variance, and 1 CUP that's already come before this group since January. Item number 2 is to review downtown parking. Again, that started late last year, and we are planning to bring that before this group in the next couple of months, again, for continued discussion. The tree preservation and replacement item is in progress, and we are hoping is nearing the finish line. The 2 items noted as not started were mentioned previously, the downtown design and placemaking standards and Victoria Worx review. Those are things we're hoping to get scheduled as we get beyond September and towards the end of the year to start those discussions. Residential zoning and PUD review, as I mentioned, is scheduled to start in September. And then some of the other items, review and providing recommendations on zoning code items. This group has already this year reviewed the updated zoning map, as well as the subdivision ordinance. Other planning and zoning goals from the council strategic plan. I've lumped the Smithtown lot, park vacation, and minor subdivision into that one. And then, of course, our mid-year and end-of-year reports, which we are doing currently. And with that, Chair, it concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions.
Thank you very much, Marty. Is there any additional thoughts on that?
I do have a quick question. What is downtown placemaking standards? What does that mean?
Thank you, Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission. So right now we have downtown design standards as part of our zoning ordinance, which regulates some of the building facade materials, some planting things. There's an entire section that provides signage, provides design guidelines for downtown. So the idea is with the hopeful eventuality of Downtown West kicking off in the next, hopefully within this year, that we'd review those downtown design standards. You know, if and how do they incorporate with the Downtown West area? Are there revisions needed? So that's what that's related to.
I totally understand the design standards, but what my question is placemaking standards. What is that?
Signage, placemaking, public art. You know, we've got a proposed park once Downtown West is takes shape. There's a central green area that's envisioned in that area. So should there be consideration for, again, public art pieces, archways, benches, signage, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Is the Rolling Hills South going to become Hunters?
I do not know the answer to that.
Huntersbrook South?
It's a different developer, right?
It is. We just were notified of the name change to Huntersbrook on yesterday, Monday.
It's going to become the Whistle Stop.
Yeah. So I have not spoken to the Rolling Hills South folks since we got that name change yesterday. So it may.
Well, for historical purposes, we didn't discuss Huntersbrook back on April 6th. We discussed Rolling Hills. So it's still accurate. It's just.
That is accurate, and related to that,
Hey,
you should see some of the creative verbiage that I need to include with draft resolutions, just to include final plat for Huntersbrook, consistent with the formerly named preliminary plat for Rolling Hills. Again, just for historical purposes, to make sure those all line up.
Do you change street names?
I have not changed any street names.
One
No.
of them starts with an H, right? And you could change it to
Yeah.
Huntersbrook.
Yeah.
that would be appropriate. I wouldn't bring it up, though.
Oh, the street's not in yet.
That may carry. Any other?
I hope at least one street has like the word pheasant in it.
Good point. It should.
Well, we've got the entire south development yet that I don't think any street names are proposed yet for that area, so I'll be sure to bring that to them.
Is the Smithtown lot marketed yet?
It is. It's
You can see it on like Edina Realty.
Yep, it is. It is marketed. In speaking to our broker who we were working with, we actually ended up listing it pretty high to begin with, just based on the market. So we listed that lot for $240,000, with the anticipation that if we didn't have much traction on it in a few weeks, that we'd reduce that. So I actually just spoke with him late last week. We're looking at reducing that to $220,000. Which is still above the 200,000, which we anticipated as kind of the area of where we'd be getting that lot. So
Okay, maybe we could just make a quick blurb in there that the property is being marketed for sale, so that when it gets presented to City Council, that this is an added talking point.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yep, it's listed. There's
A sales contract is presented in.
maybe. Yeah. No, there's a sign out on the lot. As Commissioner Schwarting mentioned, it's if you're looking for realty sites, it's out there.
I'd like to make a request whenever the time comes for us to talk about Victoria Worx. Where at that time we know a lot about access and traffic pattern. Like I know that MnDOT was spending a lot of time figuring out access points. My hope is that when we meet, we'll have that information at that time. Do you think that's possible?
Commissioner Moore, members of the commission, there is some information that's currently available as part of the Highway 11 corridor study. So the same corridor study that we've talked about with access points for the Rolling Hills, Huntersbrook development. There are identified access points, and I think there's still some unresolved potential issues with access where the city may want access that the county doesn't necessarily want to provide access. So those are things I think we'd anticipate continue working through at the time development happens and when access is needed. But there is some current information available at least as the result of that corridor study.
It's really driven by demand and developers.
Yeah, it's really, and in fact, the improvements to Highway 11 that are being proposed for 2022 is a development-driven improvement. It's something that they likely would not have done absent development, and similar to our Victoria Works area would be a development-driven improvement to that area and that corridor.
Very good. Anything else? The only thing that I would like to add is that all of those that are available to attend, please do for the city council meeting. I think it's a bit of a team event. Can be a team event at the same time, and there can be more than one or two people that can respond to anything at the same time too. So I would encourage that. Anything else? Thank you very much. That does conclude this item.
That was a good summary.
Thank you.
Moving on to miscellaneous items. And I promised that I wouldn't take over 2 hours on this. So I will keep it within the confines of that. There was a number of items. One is the update of definitions that was sent to everyone. Is everyone in agreement with that? It made sense to me, and I think it defines what we had agreed on. So it was just another piece that I had. I was at the city council meeting, and Jared was online, following it at the same time. There was 3 items for discussion. I think probably 3 major items. Not that every item isn't a major item, but one of them was a presentation by a former county commissioner who is now part of a Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition. And it is lobbying, essentially it's a lobbying mechanism. And it's for Highway 5 and 212. And I think the interesting part of that is that they are going all the way to the South Dakota border. So that's the transportation requirements for freight or for ag product or whatever it is. They are a lobbying mechanism. One of the things that I'm very familiar with, quite frankly, is that Highway 5, as he defined, is a orphan for funding. And we are grossly behind. We've had minimum representation in the legislature for Highway 5. So if this is an effective organization, I think we should be in favor of it. Not that we have a vote on it, but again, I think there's some lobbying that we can do with city council members at the same time. Talked about 82nd Street, which will get some pretty heavy usage when 5 is under construction. And then the arboration, or the arb rather, is a great partner, I think, that we have, a huge amount of influence. And they have a huge amount of force at the same time. So that was one of the items that was discussed. The other was a presentation by the Park and Rec chair, and it's Bavaria Trail East. And there was discussion on it. There was no necessarily a decision. I think it was, for all intents and purposes, it was tabled, is how it was viewed. More work that's going to happen to answer the questions. They had secured a $150,000 grant for the trail. In the scheme of everything, in relative costs, that's not a huge amount of money, but it's $150,000 worth of tax dollars. So that always means that it has some real value. It'll get cycled back through Park and Rec, and I suspect that in the decision-making process, which was, without going into too much depth on that, I think the attitude is, so how are we going to make this happen? And because essentially that's what we're here to do, is to make it happen. It didn't happen, but it'll go back through and it'll get taken care of, I suspect. Certainly demand is there. The other thing relative to the city is that there's a ribbon cutting event for Wasserman Park. I would encourage. I was on a early spring tour, a very muddy tour of Wasserman, I guess Reserve is officially how it's defined. And that's something that I would recommend everyone attend if you're available also.
Do you happen to have the date?
28th.
Yeah, I do in a minute.
Yes, it is the 28th.
Okay.
Yep,
Which is the same day as the council meeting.
yep.
Be a big Victoria Day.
Our own.
4 o'clock.
Okay.
4 o'clock, yep. Our own Director Dole did a presentation on the golf carts, ATVs, and for the city for consideration. Those in favor, or the survey actually surprised me that it was essentially 80-20, 80% in favor, 20% opposed.
It's a very big survey.
Yeah.
Seemed like it.
87 people.
That seems pretty small.
Very unscientific. 87.
87.
They asked people who were on four-wheelers, and
No, that we didn't do.
Folks on Deer Run.
Yeah, Deer Run, would you like to drive downtown? Yes, I would.
Asked all the three-wheeler people that were.
Yeah, they, three-wheeler coalition. It was I think it's for the decision-making process. I think it's one of those things. So think about it.
It was brought up by the Carver County Sheriff, I think, or that the cities were
Yeah, Chair, do you mind if I can give just a brief
Yep, go
recap? So last fall, the Carver County Sheriff's Office had asked all of the cities within Carver County to clean up its ordinances related to special vehicles, i.e. ATVs, golf carts, snowmobiles on city streets. There was some conflicting enforcement and things, so they really wanted people or cities to think about it and do you or do you not want to allow these things on your streets? And if they're allowed, put in regulations and requirements that we can help enforce. So that's what started that conversation in January. The city council during a workshop had indicated that they were interested in allowing the use of golf carts and ATVs extended out to other city streets, and directed staff to do some research and provide ordinance language that would allow for that. So at the meeting last night, there was a public hearing held, and the proposed ordinance language was presented that would allow golf carts and ATVs. Snowmobiles are already allowed, but would allow golf carts and ATVs on all city streets, absent any state or county highways. So none of the state or county highways, roadways in excess of 30 miles an hour. So that excludes Bavaria and Marsh Lake Road, and then any of the streets in downtown. So they would not be allowed in the downtown area. That ultimately was approved by the council with a sunset clause included, that this will be looked at as a pilot program to allow for this use. The clause in the ordinance has it expire on March 31st of 2022 unless prior extended by the city council. So the idea would be that next March, staff would bring this item back to the council again, provide some information, how many citations were given to people, how many complaints have we received, any other anecdotal information related to it, and the council can make a decision as to whether or not they want to allow it to sunset and again prohibit them on streets, or remove that sunset clause and allow it to continue.
Marty, is there discussion about like the downtown? I'm just interested to see, like, you can't come downtown with your golf cart, but you can drive around. Like, I don't. What were they talking about with that?
And I think there was some conversation, Commissioner Murray, chair, members of the commission, related to already congestion and parking issues and things downtown. There was also a counterpoint that things like golf carts and ATVs could actually, smaller areas, so less parking. So there was some conversation about that, but ultimately for this pilot program that they've put into place, they've decided not to allow them in downtown.
So, question about paths and ways in which the ATVs and the golf carts drive. I think about Church Lake Road, and you have the development that's to the, I guess that would be the southeast, the gallery. What if someone wants to drive over into Watermark over Church Lake Road? Is that legal?
Yep, you are allowed to cross. Any of those prohibited roads, you are allowed to cross. You're just not allowed to drive on them.
Okay.
Right.
Ready to.
Yeah,
It's hard to believe, it's hard for me to believe there's a big demand for this, but whatever. I see it in Deer Run, but outside of that.
I think if you have been to any communities in Florida where golf carts are a normal transportation, where they're utilizing street legal vehicles, you kind of see like people who would summer there or winter there would come back here and go, oh, I sure would like to drive my golf cart to the Classic Car Night, or to Winchester and Rye.
If you had a classic golf cart.
Maybe, but then that would be okay. Maybe that's next.
well,
But those communities are built for that, are they not?
Yeah.
Some are and some are not. Like Marco Island allows them, and that was not built for them, but they allow street legal on streets that are less, or 35 miles per hour or less. So there's some rules around it, and some condos don't allow it, some do. So there are things you have to take into consideration, but it's pretty popular.
well, I would be in favor. I would think that I would be in favor until I thought it through. But we have another home in a small town, southwestern part of the state, and then a farm also that's a mile away, and have a John Deere Gator. And it's just very, very convenient. But when you look at at a metropolitan or at a suburban area like Victoria, and how many John Deere Gators or golf carts or whatever, and 50 miles per hour is maximum speed, which is, would certainly require a slow-moving vehicle triangle at the same time, would be one of the requirements. But if you've ever seen congestion, and if you've ever seen, everyone having maybe a little bit better time with them than would be reasonable, I would suggest it's another one of those things you really wanna think through. I don't know that I will speak to the at the public hearing on it, but
Chair.
I can see problems.
Yeah, just for clarification, the public hearing was held last evening, so it was approved.
So you have to wait till March.
Happening.
Yeah, to the next one. So,
So we just need to buy a lot and let
But-
people park over there.
South side
and-
of 5.
And I still have more of my 2 hours that I can use up. So the other item is Commissioner Laura Moore is the next planning commissioner to attend the city council meeting, which is on the 28th. Yep.
I had that down.
So I would any other
You have to drive here in your golf cart.
You need to get one.
Can't. And where to park it.
Snowy, I might be able to drive my snowmobile. But again, I can't cross over 5, can I?
You can cross.
You can cross
Well,
by.
but you can't
Can't
drive
park
on,
it.
you can't drive on streets in the downtown area,
Okay,
so.
find a place to park
What
over
about
there.
what about the bike path? Can you go down the bike?
Nope.
Nope,
No.
not allowed on trails or sidewalks.
Yeah. It's okay.
Oh, well.
Exercise will be good for me.
But you can
Artie.
No miscellaneous from staff, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other items?
I just had a lot of neighbors asking about the water restrictions, and one of the things that Commissioner Schwarting brought up was, are we prepared for this influx of people? And it sounds like a lot of that was addressed last night, so I just wanted to make sure that that was something that was brought up, was addressed, and it sounds like I'm just behind, so that's good to know.
Yeah, Commissioner Pederson, City Engineer Kara Guerin during the roundtable section did have a presentation and talked about how the system is planned and when it's needs to be increased or capacity needs to be changed. So again, I will not try to butcher her remarks again for a second time, but I would encourage you all to watch that.
I'm just glad it's being addressed, because I had a lot of neighbors that were very confused and concerned about it. So it'll be nice to be able to bring that back to them.
Marty, was there discussion about the communication from the city to the residents? Because it was interesting, I expected some kind of letter or email, because if they have your water, if you're, paying your water bill online, you get that email. And I didn't see it any other way besides actually proactively either going online or on social media. Or finally today or yesterday, I think the signs went on the neighborhoods.
They're really small.
Very small signs.
I couldn't read it. I was like, if you're going 50 miles an hour, you're like,
I was like, what was that?
I was stopped right next to it.
But I wondered
Can't
about
read that.
holding people accountable versus notification, because it seems like they're in a little.
Presentation
I never got
was weak.
notified.
Yeah,
You know?
Commissioner Murray, Chair, members of the commission, we've had a lot of discussion about the communications internally. Again, I think that our communications manager has done a good job of trying to get as much information out as possible. There was discussion about, does it make sense to send out a letter or a postcard, but with not knowing how long this ban is going to last, we didn't want to send out a mailer that would come out the day before the ban ends, and it just didn't seem to be efficient, which is why you've seen some of these other means out there. Emails are a little bit more challenging because we do not have a master city email list for everyone within the city. I wish we did. We'd be able to get a lot of information out, but we did send out via our subscription email list, so anyone's that subscribed to our email list did get an email notification. So we did try to get that out to as many people and as quickly as possible. And again, the question about a letter or a postcard was discussed, but we didn't know what the timing, by the time you'd get them all printed and posted and out, are you gonna be too late?
I got the notification, and then I maintain our HOA mailing list, so then I send it to everybody in
everybody.
the
That's
HOA.
smart.
And then I feel like I should.
But they have, but they did do social media. They do have,
Oh,
they put signs out starting yesterday. They do have available, like door hangers, I think is what Dana said, that have basically, it's two-sided, one talking about the ban and then the other kind of reiterating what the watering requirements are, because there are people that aren't following the water requirements. I do know that the city is driving around looking like at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Can they tell off your meter? I
They
mean,
can tell off your meter
they can tell off your
also.
meter if your usage is
Yes, is excessive,
higher than your normal.
yes.
And especially with the new Wi-Fi ones that they were putting in that,
Yeah, because when we went through that
yeah, I can't remember.
water treatment center, they could pull up your water bill and they could tell you how much water usage and whether you even have like a leaky toilet. I mean, they could get that they could see constantly, like, at midnight, you still got water running, even though everybody should be sleeping, or whatever. So they do have the capability to monitor all the water usage that goes on, but it was mainly, I mean, if you watch the meeting, it was more about going from, I don't remember the numbers, but it was like 500 gallons a day to 7,000 or 700,000. I mean, it was outrageous. It was like 5 times more, 350 to 70. Or,
Yeah, it's about 5 times
it
more.
was 5 times more water usage, and it was also, peaking at, 5 in the morning. All the irrigation systems go off, and now you got all the well pumps running. And then, if all of a sudden their water usage goes out and there's a fire, and now you don't have, it was more even trying to get people to regulate once we get off of this, that, try to figure out how to regulate the time of day control and stuff like that.
Well, you don't want to water middle of the day or long.
No, but it was like even watering more at night, or, but how do you tell? I mean, because everybody has their irrigation.
They have the
settings.
odd even days. I know a couple
Right.
of people in our neighborhood got fined for not following that prior to the ban.
Yeah,
So I don't know how they caught them, but, so they do have that to try to even it out.
right,
Which you could do something in addition to that.
right.
Just because we're talking about it, I will just clarify, yes, when we are not in a watering ban, there is an odd-even schedule. So odd-numbered addresses can water on odd-numbered days, even-numbered addresses can water on even-numbered days, and there is a midday watering ban every day. So regardless of your day of the week that you can water. Yeah, correct. So that is the typical restriction outside of the situation we're in right
and
now.
is Monday day 1 or Sunday?
I believe that our interpretation is that it's the actual day of the calendar. So
Calendar day, okay.
if first,
I was like-
third, fifth,
Odd gets like 4
That's my
extra days a
husband's
year.
with the 31st.
If you're even, you lose out a couple.
Yeah, me either.
That's why you see greener lawns on that side of the street. Yeah.
That explains it.
Isaac, anything for us?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other items that we wanna cover?
I'm curious about, we haven't heard an update in a while on the 13.5 acres. Is there anything that's new that you can share?
We are still diligently working, hoping to have a formal proposal brought forward before the end of the summer. I believe the last time we spoke with the folks we've been working with is a week and a half ago, so just recently again. Still optimistic, things looking like they're moving in the right direction. So I would just say I think we're optimistic we'll have a formal proposal that'll be coming before this group and the city council, hopefully before the end of the summer.
And is that application contingent on a new grant, or does it not need a grant?
Currently, with the discussions we've been having, it would not be contingent on grant funding.
Okay. Same applicant?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Before we make a motion to adjourn, do we have the commission adopt the work plan, which is the last page in our?
I can jump in there. Sorry, Commissioner Avansky, Chair, members of the commission. The work plan was actually adopted in January. I had just included that in as
So it's not for us
reference.
to adopt.
No, correct, correct.
Thank you.
I
Thank
second
you.
the motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those that disapprove? Thank you very much. The motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.